The 1950s gave us noir classics like Sunset Boulevard and Vertigo, but buried beneath the studio system's golden hits lie 13 mystery thrillers so strange, so ahead of their time, that Hollywood practically pretended they never existed. One features a killer who uses classical music as murder weapons. Another got banned for being too psychologically disturbing. These forgotten gems deserved better. Number 13, Crime of Passion, 1957. This late-era noir thriller was so brutal in its depiction of female ambition that United Artists barely knew how to market it. Barbara Stanwyck plays Kathy Ferguson, a newspaper columnist who marries a cop and then systematically destroys everyone in her path to advance his career. When Police Inspector Raymond Burr decides he's had enough of her manipulation, she responds by murdering him in cold blood. The film's unflinching portrayal of a woman using murder as a career advancement tool was way too dark for 1950s audiences. Director Gerd Oswald shot it with documentary-style realism that made Stanwyck's character genuinely disturbing rather than tragically sympathetic. This wasn't a femme fatale with a heart of gold. This was purely calculated evil in a housewife's clothing. United Artists released it on double bills and drive-ins, treating it like disposable B-movie material. Critics who saw it were divided between praising Stanwyck's fearless performance and condemning the film's cynical worldview. The movie made modest money, but disappeared quickly from theaters. What makes it really special is how it predicted every ambitious woman-gone-wrong thriller that came after. Stanwyck's performance is absolutely ruthless, showing zero remorse for her actions. The film's vision of marriage as a business transaction and murder as office politics was decades ahead of its time. Number 12. Nightfall, 1957. Aldo Ray stars in this tightly wound thriller about a man falsely accused of crimes he didn't commit, forced to run from both the law and the real criminals who want him dead. Director Jacques Tourneur shot it like a documentary, using real locations and natural lighting to create an almost unbearable sense of paranoia. The film's real-time structure and relentless pacing was way ahead of its time. This was pure psychological pressure without traditional action sequences or romantic subplots. Just one man's desperate attempt to prove his innocence while everyone hunts him down. Audiences expecting typical crime drama got this claustrophobic nightmare instead. Columbia Pictures treated it like a B-movie programmer, releasing it without fanfare on double bills. Critics who saw it praised its technical innovation, but general audiences were confused by its unconventional approach to thriller storytelling. The film made minimal money and quickly disappeared. What makes it special is how it pioneered the innocent man-on-the-run format that became standard for thrillers. Every wrongfully accused protagonist, from Montmorency fugitive to North by Northwest, owes something to this film's paranoid atmosphere. Tourneur created a template that influenced decades of suspense cinema, but nobody gave him credit. Number 11. Armored Car Robbery, 1950. This lightning-fast heist thriller clocks in at just 67 minutes, but packs more tension than most two-hour blockbusters. Charles McGraw and William Talman star in a documentary-style crime story that follows a botched armored car heist and the manhunt that follows. Director Richard Fleischer shot it like a police report, focusing on forensic procedure rather than glamorous criminals. The film's breakneck pacing and realistic violence shocked audiences expecting traditional crime drama. This wasn't romanticized gangster material. This was brutal street-level criminality shown with almost documentary realism. The heist sequence itself, filmed in real time, became the template for every robbery film that followed. RKO released it as a B-movie programmer, but critics immediately recognized its innovation. The film's influence on later heist movies was enormous, from Kubrick's The Killing to Man's Heat. Every realistic crime film owes something to this movie's unglamorous approach to criminal activity. What makes it really special is how it treats crime as actual work, not romantic adventure. The criminals are working-class guys doing a dangerous job. The cops are methodical professionals. No one's heroic, no one's evil, everyone's just trying to survive. This matter-of-fact approach to crime was revolutionary for 1950. Number 10. The Big Combo, 1955. Cornell Wilde and Richard Conte star in this brutal crime thriller about a cop's obsessive pursuit of a mob boss, but it's the film's sadistic violence and moral ambiguity that really sets it apart. Director Joseph Lewis shot it with expressionist lighting that makes every scene look like a nightmare, while the screenplay pushes boundaries that other films wouldn't dare approach. The movie's depiction of torture and psychological cruelty was so intense that censors demanded major cuts. This wasn't glamorous gangster material, this was genuinely disturbing criminal behavior shown with clinical detail. The famous hearing aid torture scene was so brutal that some theaters refused to show it. Allied artists released it as a B-movie, but critics immediately recognized its artistic merit. The film's high-contrast cinematography and shadow-heavy compositions influenced every noir that came after. Even today, The Big Combo looks more visually striking than most modern crime films. What makes it really special is how it refuses to provide easy moral answers. The cop is obsessed to the point of madness, the criminals have genuine human moments, and nobody's purely heroic or villainous. This psychological complexity was way ahead of its time and predicted every morally ambiguous crime thriller that followed. Number 9. Kiss Me Deadly, 1955. Robert Aldrich's atomic age thriller starring Ralph, Meeker as Mike Hammer, was so violent and cynical that critics called it fascist propaganda. Based on Mickey Spillane's novel, the film follows a private detective who picks up a hitchhiker and gets pulled into a conspiracy involving nuclear materials and systematic torture. The movie's depiction of brutality and its apocalyptic ending were way too dark for 1950s audiences. This wasn't traditional detective material, this was a paranoid nightmare about atomic annihilation disguised as pulp fiction. The famous briefcase that glows with deadly radiation became one of cinema's most influential MacGuffins. United Artists released it without fanfare, treating it like another cheap detective story. Critics who saw it were divided between praising its innovation and condemning its violence. The film made modest money but was quickly overshadowed by more conventional thrillers. What makes it really special is how it predicted every paranoid conspiracy thriller that came after. From Tarantino's Pulp Fiction to TV's The X-Files, everyone borrowed from this film's vision of a world where ordinary people stumble into deadly secrets. Aldrich created a template for atomic age anxiety that influenced decades of cinema. Number 8. Sudden Fear, 1952. Joan Crawford delivers one of her most terrifying performances as a wealthy playwright who discovers her husband is plotting to murder her for her money. But instead of going to the police, she decides to turn the tables and destroy him first. Director David Miller shot it like a psychological horror film, making Crawford's transformation from victim to predator genuinely disturbing. The film's depiction of domestic violence and premeditated murder was way too realistic for comfort. This wasn't melodramatic thriller material. This was a clinical study of how ordinary people become killers. Crawford's performance is absolutely ruthless, showing a woman who discovers she's capable of anything. RKO promoted it as a standard woman-in-peril thriller, but audiences got something much darker. The film's cat-and-mouse structure and psychological realism influenced every domestic thriller that came after. Critics praised Crawford's performance, but many noted how uncomfortable the film made them feel. What makes it really special is how it refuses to provide easy moral answers. Crawford's character becomes just as manipulative and dangerous as her husband, making it impossible to root for anyone. This moral ambiguity was way ahead of its time and predicted every psychological thriller from Fatal Attraction to Gone Girl. Number 7. House on Telegraph Hill, 1951. Valentina Cortese stars in this twisted thriller about a woman who assumes a dead friend's identity to escape post-war poverty, only to discover her new husband might be trying to kill her. Director Robert Wise shot it with the same documentary realism he'd bring to The Day the Earth Stood Still, making the psychological horror feel disturbingly authentic. The film's exploration of identity theft and domestic murder was way ahead of its time. This was long before anyone understood how identity fraud worked, but the movie treats it with chilling realism. Cortese's performance captures the paranoia of someone living a completely false life while surrounded by potential killers. 20th Century Fox barely promoted it, releasing it as a standard domestic thriller. Critics who saw it praised its psychological complexity, but audiences were confused by its unconventional structure. The film made modest money, but disappeared quickly from theaters. What makes it really special is how it predicted every identity swap thriller that came after. From Single White Female to The Talented Mr. Ripley, every film about stolen identities owes something to this movie's paranoid atmosphere. Wise created a template for psychological suspense that was decades ahead of its time. Number 6. She Played with Fire, 1957. Arlene Dahl stars in this British-American psychological thriller as a woman caught in a deadly love triangle involving murder, blackmail, and arson. Jack Hawkins plays her husband, a man with dangerous secrets, while Dennis Price rounds out the triangle as her potential lover. Director Sidney Gilliat created a paranoid masterpiece about marriage and betrayal. The film's frank depiction of adultery and its consequences was too adult for American audiences. This wasn't romantic drama, this was a clinical examination of how people destroy each other through manipulation and violence. Dahl's performance is genuinely unsettling, showing a woman who might be victim or perpetrator. Columbia Pictures barely distributed it in America, treating it like a foreign art film. Critics who saw it praised its psychological complexity, but general audiences had no idea what to make of its unconventional approach to thriller storytelling. The film made minimal money and quickly disappeared. What makes it special is how it predicted every domestic thriller about marital deception. The movie's exploration of identity, trust, and the violence lurking beneath middle-class respectability was decades ahead of its time. Every psychological thriller from Jagged Edge to Gone Girl owes something to this forgotten masterpiece. Number 5. A Kiss Before Dying, 1956. Robert Wagner delivers his most chilling performance as a charming sociopath who murders his pregnant girlfriend and then systematically pursues her sister. Based on Ira Levine's novel, the film was way too dark for audiences expecting a standard romantic thriller. Director Gerd Oswald shot it with documentary-style realism that made Wagner's character genuinely terrifying. The movie's depiction of calculated murder and psychological manipulation was shocking for its time. This wasn't passionate crime, this was cold-blooded business. Wagner's performance is absolutely ruthless, showing a man who views murder as just another tool for social advancement. United Artists promoted it as a standard romantic drama, but audiences got this nightmare about American ambition gone wrong. Critics praised Wagner's against-type performance, but many noted how the film's cynical worldview made them uncomfortable. The movie made modest money, but was quickly forgotten. What makes it really special is how it predicted every charming psychopath thriller that came after. From American Psycho to Nightcrawler, every film about ambitious killers owes something to this movie's chilling portrait of sociopathic behavior. Oswald created a template for the modern psychological thriller that was decades ahead of its time. Number 4. Dial 1-119, 1950. This real-time thriller about an emotionally disturbed young man who holds bar patrons hostage was so psychologically intense that MGM barely knew how to market it. Marshall Thompson plays a mental patient who escapes and takes over a cocktail lounge, turning it into a pressure cooker of human psychology and desperation. The film's documentary-style approach to mental illness and violence was way ahead of its time. Director Gerald Mayer shot it like a case study, focusing on the psychological profiles of both the hostage-taker and his victims. This wasn't exploitative thriller material, this was a serious examination of trauma and desperation. MGM released it as a B-movie programmer, treating it like disposable entertainment. Critics who saw it were impressed by its psychological realism, but audiences expecting action got this claustrophobic character study instead. The film made minimal money and quickly disappeared. What makes it really special is how it predicted every hostage thriller that came after. From Dog Day Afternoon to Phone Booth, every film about psychological pressure under siege conditions owes something to this movie's real-time structure. Mayer created a template for contained thrillers that was decades ahead of its time. Number 3. The Brothers Rico, 1957. Richard Conte delivers his most powerful performance as a man trying to escape his criminal family only to discover the mob won't let him go. Based on a Georges Simenon novel, the film follows an accountant whose brothers are marked for death by the syndicate, forcing him to choose between family loyalty and survival. The movie's depiction of organized crime as a business operation was way ahead of its time. This wasn't romanticized gangster material, this was corporate criminality shown with documentary realism. Director Phil Carlson shot it like a police procedural, focusing on the mechanical aspects of murder and intimidation. Columbia Pictures barely promoted it, releasing it as a standard crime programmer. Critics who saw it praised its psychological complexity, but audiences expecting traditional gangster action got this clinical examination of family loyalty and betrayal. The film made minimal money and quickly disappeared. What makes it really special is how it predicted every modern organized crime thriller. From The Godfather to Goodfellas, every film about the business side of crime owes something to this movie's matter-of-fact approach to violence. Carlson created a template for corporate criminality that influenced decades of cinema. Number 2. Pushover, 1954. Fred MacMurray plays against type as a corrupt cop who falls for femme fatale Kim Novak and gets pulled into a deadly scheme involving bank robbery and murder. Director Richard Quine shot it with documentary-style realism that made MacMurray's moral decay genuinely disturbing rather than romantically tragic. The film's unflinching portrayal of police corruption was too dark for audiences expecting traditional crime drama. This wasn't noir glamour. This was a clinical examination of how ordinary people become criminals. MacMurray's performance is absolutely ruthless, showing a man who destroys everything he touches. Columbia Pictures promoted it as a standard thriller, but audiences got this nightmare about institutional corruption and personal betrayal. Critics praised the performances, but many noted how the film's cynical worldview made them uncomfortable. The movie made modest money, but was quickly overshadowed by more conventional films. What makes it really special is how it predicted every corrupt cop thriller that came after. From Serpico to Training Day, every film about police officers gone wrong owes something to this movie's matter-of-fact approach to institutional decay. Quine created a template for corruption thrillers that was decades ahead of its time. Number 1. The Asphalt Jungle, 1950. John Huston's heist masterpiece was so realistic in its depiction of criminal planning and execution that police departments actually studied it to understand how real robberies worked. Sterling Hayden leads a crew planning the perfect jewelry store heist, but everything that can go wrong does go wrong. The film's documentary-style approach to crime was revolutionary. Instead of glamorizing criminals, Huston showed them as working-class guys doing a dangerous job. The actual heist sequence, filmed in real time with minimal dialogue, became the template for every heist movie that followed. MGM was nervous about the film's moral ambiguity and only gave it a limited release. Critics praised it as a masterpiece, but audiences were confused by its lack of clear heroes and villains. The film made modest money but was quickly overshadowed by more conventional thrillers. What makes it the ultimate forgotten thriller is how it influenced everything that came after, while getting almost no credit. From Riff-a-Fee to Heat to Ocean's 11, every heist film owes something to the Asphalt Jungle's realistic approach to crime. It basically created an entire subgenre, but remains criminally underrated. These 13 thrillers prove that the 1950s was way more innovative and dangerous than film history usually admits. Studios buried them for being too weird, too dark, or too ahead of their time. But here's the real question. If these films were too radical for the supposedly innocent 50s, what does that say about how sanitized our current thrillers have become? Drop your thoughts below and tell me which forgotten thriller deserves a modern remake.